Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Got it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the confirmation, guys. And for the today's session, and it's continuation for the topic for the governance risk and complaints paper. And we just covered for all the 4 units except the complaints one. And that is the one we are going to see for today's session. And in overview of these 4 units, and unit one, which will cover for the basic introduction of the governance, compliance, and risk scope and objective of the thing, and what is the metrics and frameworks which we have used in terms of Basel and OECD format, and what are the ITS standards which we are used, and what is meant by capability maturity model and other stuff. So everything we have discussed for unit one and two and three, which is fully covering for information security governance thing, which is include for strategic alignment and risk management and value management and quality management. So, and the steering committee, which we have discussed in the unit three, and fourth unit we have discussed in elaboration with the risk management perspective and what is the roles and responsibilities in terms of a risk and how we are going to monitor those risks and what is the case study and how the risk we are going to mitigate and how the assessment are happening in terms of risk. Everything we have discussed it, and the final one is for compliance, and that is a thing. And we are going to discuss about what is meant by complaints and the evaluation of the information system, how the complaints will work on it, and what is the roles and responsibilities of that one. And if the complaints come to the place, and how the audit and assessment process we are going to do in the organization, and what is the role for the complaints officer and who's going to handle for the complaints process, and what is the role for them, and what is the duties, and what are the responsibilities they have it. That is we're going to see. And next one is for if the complaints officer making any complaints process, any complaints reports, and how they are going to drafting those complaints reports that we are going to see in this session, and also for audit and audit planning and best practices for IT complaints requirement in terms of complaints thing, and we have some IT complaints that is for class 49 of a SEBI agreement and for Sarbanes-Oxley Act of USA. So these are the two IT compliance requirement which is defined by various classes, and the last one is for information technology for ISCA, and these are the things which we are going to cover for the today's session in terms of with respect to the topic of complaints. I'm just going to share my screen. So in this paper and the first overall topics which you have going to cover for the introduction to information technology and security and designing the internal complaint system, how you're going to design for the complaint system in the internal perspective, and how this information system going to audit in progress for review, reporting, everything and all. And final thing is for best practice thing in terms of IT complaints and regulatory requirement. So in this introduction to the information technology and security thing, and we are going to see for evaluation of information system and audit assessment review and the roles and duties responsibilities of complaints officers and roles in the complaints functions and the requirement of the complaints officer and drafting a complaints report that we are going to see in for here. And okay, first thing. Uh, that is introduction to the information technology, which is called involving the protection of the computer system and prevention of unauthorized usage of or changes or access of electronic data. So, in terms of security in the field of information technology, and the basic thing is for protection of the computer system and prevention for the unauthorized access. We should discuss the application security thing, and if any user was unauthorized user get the access in order to manipulate the data, and it will be very harmful one in terms of information technology. So in order to secure those things, and we have to make the protection of the system, and we need to prevent the unauthorized access or changes or access to the electronic data. And it deals for the protection of software, hardware, network, and then its information. Obviously, when they come to the security thing, and they will protect for all the hardware, software thing, and network, and as well as all the information what they collected in terms of application or in for uh, from the user level of thing. So, so the due to the heavy resilience of the company in the modern industry that they store data and transmit the confidential information about people, cybersecurity is critical function and needed insurance of many businesses. So, in order to make the high protection of the security in terms of information technology, we have to make that the confidential information about the people and cybersecurity and the critical function that need to be insurance of many businesses that we are doing in the organization level. So these are the things for evaluation of information systems. And in 1950s, that is for data processing, and it's the evaluation for we call this for electronic data processing, and it will store and collect the modify the address data, day-to-day data transaction of the organization, and it will work for the it will help for the workers and who's getting the data information and who's doing the data processing in 1950s to 1960s. And the next one is for 1916 to 17. We can call it as for management information system. And in this management system, in this management information system, that is for MIS thing. And that is for predefined reports and display to support business decision making. And it will help for the mid level of the managers, which is for detailed information report, typically for the transaction processing activities, or as for summary of the information which is establishing the data to the format, and individuals can review the individual can easily review and quickly make the format by using those MIS thing and management reporting thing. And the next one is for decision support, that is for decision making thing in 1970s and 1980s, and it will interactive ad hoc kind of thing, and it will help to make the decision making process, and it will they'll help for the senior level of people in order to take the business, as well as for if any projects revenues, or they want the figures based on that product sales assumptions though. So everything will be gathering those information in terms of the decision support. 1980s and 1990s, that is for executive support, and in this support they have um, and they provide for both internal and external information relevant to the strategic goals of the organization, and it deal for the executives, which means the executive people will be handling for the internal and external information relevant to the business perspective, and how the business going to evaluate from that is mission to vision process. So everything will be gathering all the information in the field of 1980s 90s with the executive support level. And 1990s and 2000, that is for knowledge management thing. And during this period, that is during this era, that and we could see the rapid growth in terms of internet thing. And and we have come to the picture of the global network thing, and it is dramatically changing for all the capabilities of the information security in terms of business. And in this period we could see some emergence of enterprise resolution, emergency of enterprise resource planning, there is ERP thing. And ERP is for enterprise resource planning, and it is for the system that incorporate with a component of an organization, which is including for the manufacturing thing, and the sales and resource management and human resource planning and marketing. So all the details will be in the knowledge management evaluation thing. And the final one is for that is e-business. And nowadays we people are using for all the activities through the e-business only. And it is for greater connectivity and the higher level of integration across application. And it will help for the global e-business. People can make the business in where we are in, and we can able to sell for all the products through that all the possible ways. And in order to secure for all the information. So these are the things which we are. There is a evaluation of that information system, which we have described here, and then for that objective of the complaints. So the main objective of the complaints, which is mentioned here, that is for legal and regulatory awareness, and that is the complaint should ensure for the applicable laws and regulations and industry standards, which is including for the reporting obligations and data protections. Everything need to be adherence for the legal and regulatory. And then the main objective of the complaints is for the risk mitigation. If they identifying the any addressing complaints is to risk to prevent the legal, financial, and reputational consequences, and we have to make those risk mitigation activities. And we have to follow for the ethical culture and in terms of promoting integrity and transparency and accountability. And these are the ethical behavior among the employees. And another objective for is for internal control, and which is for implementing that implementing the measurements of the monitor and enforce compliance, which is including the reporting and corrective actions what we have taken in the internal control. And we have to build the stakeholder trust. The main objective behind the complaint is for the stakeholder trust, and that is what we have discussed in the cockpit also, that they are the 5 principles. And the 5 principles, which is also one of the principles, is for the making the stakeholders in the trust manner. That is what here the main complaints, the objective of the main complaints. And it is for building the trust with the stakeholders, such as the customers or investors, by demonstrating the commitment to the complaints. And the complaints will ensure the organization how the organization will operate ethically, and how they are going to manage the risk, and how they maintain the stakeholder confidence. Everything will be there. And this is the objective of the complaints. And next one is for audit, and how the audit are going to make the assessment. Now they are going to review those audit. That is we are going to see here now. And in this audit, it is for then it's a measurable technical assessment on how the organization's security policy is employed, and it is part of the ongoing process and the defining and maintaining the effective security policies. And in terms of security audit, and it provides for the fair and measurable way to examine how the secure site really, which we have the organization currently holding on it. And the assessment, which is designed to the way of audit process is for the create a security benchmark for your organization. So you people are know that what is a benchmark. So benchmark, it is for level of thing, and they are making or creating or defining the security level in their organization. And other than that, they have some mission level of thing, and they have some benchmark in respect to the sales or services, everything else. Similarly, we have the benchmark in the security level. That is also they have to create it, and then they have to identify for that strength and weakness of the current security practices, where we have the strength and we have to improve the strength in terms of security thing, and where we are weak, how to improve those things, and where we are strong. So everything will be need to identify. Then we have to prioritize for the exposure that presents the greatest risk, and provide the risk mitigation, which is for recommendation, which consists of the compliance regulations and security industry best practices and client industry best practices and client business objectivity. So based on these things, we are making the assessment in terms of audit. And the next one is for roles and duties, responsibilities of the complaints officer, and who is going to handling for the complaints process. And we will call it as for the complaints officer, and this officer is be responsible for ensuring for the company's policies and procedures with comply with the regulatory and ethical standards, and also refer for the complaints specialist. And they have the highly analytical professional that they are performing for the regular audits, and implement company policies and design control system. So those people will be the complaints officer in the organization, and they have some duties with respect to the complaints officer. They have to review and update the internal policies, and they have to review the practices and what are the practices we have it, and conduct the investigation if any risk or any breaches has happened. We have to look into that investigation, and we have to maintain the regulatory knowledge and identify the potential risk where the risk is there and how we are going to handle everything will be the main duties of the complaints officers, and their responsibilities for and develop and implement the company policies and regulations. That is what we are describing here for the duties of the complaints, and design and monitor for the control system to deal with the violation of legal rules and internal policies, and regulatory assesses that is efficiency of control system, and the recommend effective improvement, and review and evaluate the company procedures, and report to the identify latent risk or common issues, and coordinate the different department managers to review all the department complaints policies, and perform periodic audits on company procedures and procedures and processes, and lead the employee training sessions on legal and compliance issues. So these are the responsibilities in terms of with respect to the compliance officers. And when we are joining the company, they will in the indexation session, they will elaborate for everything and all, and what does mean by how the peoples are working on it, and how the risk factors in the project level of thing, and how the complaints people are will be handling it. So everything will be defining it. So that is the roles and responsibilities of that complaints officer, and the functionality behind those roles and duties and responsibility of the complaints officer is for the basic function that they have the complaints role, which is for promote the ethical contact and the compliance with the rules and regulations, and they have the standard procedures, and it govern for how the organization should conduct the business, and they have to maintain for the compliance function, and where the staff in the compliance function must stay on the top of the latest law, and it is not to be in oldest one, and should be in the latest one on top of that standard latest laws and regulation of the business, and trends they should be able to translate this into the requirement and procedures for the operation of the organizations. And in order to, we are broadly speaking to the following area, that is major rules within the complaints functions, and they have for develop and maintain the appropriate complaints culture, and they have to advise on the regulatory issues, and monitoring is the best practices for all the aspects, and communicating if any complaints functions changing or any complaint procedure policy is changing, they have to communicate with all the stakeholders as well as for the employees who is in the organization, and handling issues, how they are going to handling for those issues in terms of complaint functions. And the basic requirement of the complaints officer is for the bachelor degree in the law or finance in the business management or relevant to the field, and they have the 5 years of proven experience as a complaints officer role, and they have the good knowledge for legal requirement and procedures, and brilliant oral and written communication skill must be in the complaints officer should have the basic requirement thing. And sorry, if the complaints officer going to make any report, that is a complaints report, and before that they will make the draft one, and the draft will be evaluated in terms of making the perfect complaints report within the organization. And the first one is for the title page, and the title page which should have the complaints report should have the title page containing the essential information, which is for including the company's name and the report date and responsibility of the complaints department or officer, and the executive committee, and which is for the complaints report emphasizing for the key findings, recommendation, and significant issues and uncovered during the review thing. And next one is for introduction and content page, which will provides for the context of regarding the report's purpose and the scope, and complemented by the table of the content to guide the reader through the document structure and report scope and parameters. So in this phase, they have to define the compliances and review the scope, parameters, and the details, and specify the areas where the procedures and timeframes and for involved parties we have in it for the complaints report. And next one is for the purpose of the review and report. And what is the purpose we are going to review for those report, and now the review one is making it to the in move to the report manner, and that is what we are expected the outcomes and our improvement aim to the through this report one. And the fun next one is for the summary of the complaints projects. So if you are working in any project and we have to provide the summary of the complaints thing, and that is for summarizing for any complaints of the project or initiatives executed during the review period, and then highlighting for the objectives, key findings, achievements, and encounter challenges that in the draft complaining report. And final one is for acknowledgement of the key personnel, and that should be recognized and appreciate the individuals or team who play the pivotal role in the complaints review process. Next one is for finding and recommendation. And if you are finding anything in the way of recommending to in order to make the proper complaints report, and they have to provide the actionable recommendations for addressing these issues and enhance the complaints practices. And additional notes, if adding to adding on top of that complaints report anything relevant to the point of observation that may be fit into previous sections or but in the complaints report content, then they will add the additional note on that. So that's all about for information security. That is for information technology and security. And the next one is we are going for designing an internal complaint system. Any doubt on guys before moving to the next one? Okay, all right. For in this chapter, that is for designing an internal complaint system, and we have going to see for four topics. That is for regulatory of principles and the complaints functions, and the complaints with policies and procedures, and specific internal complaints control issues that is we are going to handle it. And in terms of designing for internal complaint system, and it is for promotes a systematic approach. And in this approach, the director as a complaints officer and who promotes the complaints, and the deliberate of the corporate and ethics and complaints matter in the internal control committee, that is we call this for ICC, in the designing internal complaint system. And the annual self-assessment is conducted with the checklist to see the status of the complaints and measures taken against the high risk and items according to the plans. And in this picture, we could see for the internal control committee, and we have the legal team, and that is for each section we have it, and that is self-assessment, and another one is for amendment of the infringement, and for all the activities in back and forth, and uh, the internal control committee will assessment result report to the countermeasure report, and they are supervising for all the activities, and they will instruct it to the legal team how they are going to handle it. And these are the things we have explained in the diagram it. And in the regulatory principle, we have the five kind of principles, and each principle we are carrying for each kind of strategies in terms of a regulatory thing. And the first principle will be that is for individual conducting a business transaction shall be personally responsible to face punitive actions that is resulting from blatant violations of law and regulations or restrictions affecting the conduct of those transactions. So the principle is for, so the individuals connect to the business transaction, they will be the responsible person in terms of regulatory principles. And the principle two, and anyone who is aware of the fraudulent or illegal business transaction, the conductor in the name of the university shall report them immediately. So if you are facing any fraudulent or illegal business transaction, and you have to report to the name of the university or to the immediate manner. That is the principle two. And the principle three, and which is for each unit is responsible for the restitution of the any disallowances due to the non-compliances with laws, regulations, and special restrictions. And the fourth principle will be that that is for liable for all the employees who conduct the university business transaction is responsible for staying a bit of every changing and legal regulatory requirement. And the principle five is for final one is for legal regulatory compliances, that is which is requirement as well as for any donor imposed transactions, any donor imposed restrictions shall be maintained on record. with the university and they're readily accessible. And those regulatory principles which are given the example of the university based manner. And the complaints function, that is a main critical role in the compliance, and that is for plays a critical role within the enterprise risk management framework, and it should be considered as a first among equals. So these are the first one among the equals among the other risk management participant, that is for internal audit or internal audit thing, which is included for the chief risk officer. And the complaint function will be established standard and procedures within the organization to prevent and detect the criminal conduct, that is criminal activities. And the organization has a sound of governing structures such as board for directors, which is knowledgeable about the content of the operation of the CEP. And CEP is nothing but certification of suitability, and they have the reasonable oversight with respect to the implementation of the effectiveness of the CEP, that is for certification of suitability. And the organization has the appropriate incentives and disciplinary measures to promote and enforce the CEP thing in terms of compliance function. And in this compliance function, for all the functionality, we'll have the policies and procedures. And for this compliance also, we have that policies and procedures here. And in order to establishing those policies and procedures, then we have to maintain for effective policies and procedures, and does not begin and end with the regulations. And it take the right amount of collaboration with for all the types of distributive medium and the right method to measure the understanding thing. And we have the five kind of steps that is to ensure for the complaints to choose the best possible solution. That is, one is for meet with the divisional leaders to ensure the policies and procedures are feasible. I discuss with them for the divisional leaders and get some conclusion about that and determine the best format of policies for your audience. So if it is the complaints will be determined based on the audience only. So you have to determine with the best format of the policies for your audience and make the policies and procedures easily accessible to your employees. And we have to set the deadlines for each policy and procedures to be acknowledged in. And after a period of time, you have to review those policies and the current scenario. You have to modify it, everything, and you have to communicate it in for all the or with respect to all the employees with the ICC approval or but the executive management team approval, everything and all, and determine the best way to measure the understanding. And so these are the policy and procedures with respect to the complaints. And how we are going to specifically the how we are going to handle internal complaints and how we are going to control for the issues that is we are going to see now. For that, implementing an automated expenses policy is the starting point of the managing this challenge. And when your expenses policy not only sets the strategy of the potential savings and the risk awareness, but also improves the employees' morale because the rules now become consistent and eventually applied. Employees know what expected and the risk are mitigated. And the specific internal complaints which control some issues with respect to the audience, and they have the improvement in the employees' perspective because based on the morals, and they have the roles and everything and all, and they have to expected to mitigate the risk in terms of control the issues. And the best way to ensure that the policies and enforceable is to integrate them into the expenses management system, that is expense management software, in order to the best way to ensure those policies in the terms of internal complaints control issues. And we have that some kind of control issues, that is for training and guidelines, and which is helpful for that is a policy which is integrating with the policy to enable the users rules and to be applied consistently. For example, if the employee might receive an alert that suggests for alternative travel method when the booking a flight between the certain destinations. So that need to be in the training guidelines with the repeat. And the system initiated auditing, that is nothing but it's automated system can generate an audit instruction based on the criteria, and they can help with the conducting random audits. And third one is for exception handling. Exception handling, which is for including the approvals and handling alternatives, can remove frustration and provides a sense of control. That is rather than the telling the traveling employee that they have cannot book a flight given them to the choice of getting a manager's approval. So these are things will be done exception handling. So that's all about the design for internal complaints report. Any doubt on guys up to those two chapters? The next one we are going to see for audit process, how the information system audit will be going happen, and what is the scope of the auditing. Sorry, and what is the scope of the auditing and audit planning, audit manual, audit checklist, and how the audit checklists are preparing, and how the prepared audit checklist will be making it in terms of the report. Everything will be going to see for the next one. So any doubt on guys? Before move on to the next one, I just want to make sure people are on the right page.
Ever notice how typing and sitting go hand in hand?
All right. That is for information system audit, which is for an information technology. We call it as for information technology or information system, which is for the examination of the control within the entity of the information technology infrastructure. And it is the process of collecting and evaluating for all the evidences of the organization with respect to the information system and practices and operation. And the main purpose of the IS audit is to review and evaluate the organization information system, which is availability, confidentiality, and integrity. By answering for all these questions, and you will get there why we are implementing those information security with respect to the audit process. And in terms of availability, we have to make the question like, will always the organization computerized system be available for the business when required? Yes, definitely the availability should be in terms of the information system audit, and that should be in, available for all the business when it is required. And the confidentiality, which means the information in the system be disclosed only to the authorized users. That is what we are mentioning for confidentiality. And the integrity manner, that the information provided by the system always be accurate one and reliable, and they are the timely manner. That is what we call as a integrity thing. And then the information audit flows, yeah, we are given it here. And we have the layers for the network or physical layer and the operating system and databases, and which consists of all the things will be the infrastructure services. And the middle layer is for financial application, that is for application 1923. And on top of that, we have the business process, that is the classes of transactions, what transaction we are going to do with respect to the business process. And that significant account in the financial statement, that is for balance sheet, income sheet, the cash flow notes, other disclosures. So everything will be uh, make the process in terms of audit flow. And the scope of the auditing, we have uh, several entities, but is in terms of scoping the auditing, we have the legal requirement and entity aspects, and the information should be in the reliable format, and you should communicate to the proper manner, and the evaluation should be taken place, and the test or when doing for the scope of auditing, the test will be in the right place. And the comparison, once the test and evaluation was completed, then we have to compare with the previous one to the new one. And if anything mismatch or anything we have to want to restructure it on it, you have to make those things. And judgment, finally the board member of the team will be taking the judgment process in terms of auditing. So that is what we are explaining for one by one, that legal requirement, which is for auditor can determine the scope of an audit of the financial statement following to the requirement of the legislation, regulations, and relevant professional bodies. The state can frame the rules of determining the scope of the audit work. In the same way, the professional bodies can make rules conduct the audit. Entity aspects, that is for audit report, should cover for all the functions, so that the reader may know about all the working of the concern. And reliable information, the auditor can use for various techniques, which is to test the validity of the data. And auditors, while doing the audit work, Usually apply the compliance test and substance test. The auditor can show such information in the report. And the proper communication, which means the principles of the accounting can be applied to the design about the disclosure of the financial information in the statement. The auditor can mention in the fact in his report, it will be in the communicated. And the evaluation, it is for making the study and evaluation of the accounting and accounting systems, and the internal controls of the determine the nature, extent, and timing of the other auditing procedures. And the test by carrying out for other test inquiries and other verification procedures of accounting transaction and account balances. And these are the compliances tests that substantive test to examine the data. And comparison, which is for auditor can compare the accounting records with the financial statement to check that the same has been processed for preparing the financial account of a business concern. And the next one is for test, and the test will be access the selection and consistent application of the accounting policies, how the information has been classified, and then how the etiquette of the disclosure which we have according to the statement, financial statement, will be tested in the information system audit. So these are the things in terms of information system audit thing. And the next one is for audit planning. So if you are making a audit plan process and you have to develop for the audit plan, in if you are making any creating an audit plan, and it should contain for all the element entities like the below one. That the first that is one is for auditor engagement term, and the person who is going to do the audit process, that should be they have the engagement terms and everything and all, and they have the responsibilities for the stationery of the auditor, and they have to coordinate with the other auditors and internal control system of branches and subsidiaries, and reliability of internal control system of an organization to mark important audit areas and impact of legal rules, nature and timing of the report. And these are the audit plan that we are going to develop in terms of audit plan. And the next one is for audit manual. And while doing for audit process in terms of manual work, that is we call this for audit manual. And audit manual, it is consist for a overview of the industrial risk factors facing in organizations, as well as for the protocol of the audit process, the tools and the methodologies for conducting the audit. And it should be completed one and people to contact it. And although for the audit manual is for extensive compilation of a resource, which is material to intended to the use by the internal audit staff. And the other departments may find it useful as a guide to the improve their own operations through creating or updating their own manual policies, procedures, and practices in terms of audit manual. And if you have prepared for well developed and appropriate communicated audit manual, that we can be elaborated here, that is for serve as a guide to those responsible for internal audit activities and represent a key benchmark by which internal audit can be measured. And next one is for be a reference for undertaking an audit assessment and aid in making effective decisions and assist in undertaking the staff appraisals, training and development, enhance the staff moral and productivity, assist in clarifying audit issues, audit staff and job routines and measurements. Everything will be taken care of audit manuals. And the next one is for audit checklist, and then how the audit checklists are going to prepared in that information security thing. And the checklist is for key element in the planning for planning or carrying out for a process audit. And the checklist for any internal quality audit is composed to set of questions that is read from the quality management system, and they are the standard requirement, and they are the process documentation prepared by the company. So based on that management system, that is quality management system and standard requirement, they will taken care for the audit checklist, and they will prepare for that also. And if you're doing that preparation of the audit checklist, the part of that internal quality audit preparation, the auditor will review the ISO 9001 requirement and the process documentation defined by the company of the process to be audited. If an example for IS 9001, and that is for the class for management review, inputs request for the management review, which includes for the information of the results of audit and the customer feedback and process performance of the product conformity, and the status of corrective and preventive actions, and follow-up actions from previous management and reviews, changes that could affect the quality management systems and recommendations for improvement. And these are the things which we are mentioning in that audit checklist. Yeah, okay. So audit checklist, and they have the recommendation for all the for the improvement changes, and the changes could affect for the quality management system, everything and all. They have the audit checklists while doing the preparation of the audit checklist. And if the company process requires that management review, and then they have to produce for the minutes of meeting as a recorded one, and then the internal audit checklist could request that the auditor review the minutes of meeting, and they have any question, and each piece of the input information was presented to the management review meeting for assessment. So these are the way they will make the audit checklist and prepare for the audit checklist, and will be sending to the meeting of minutes in terms of audit checklist preparation thing, in terms of that the management review. And next is for the audit, how the audit was prepared, audit checklist was prepared, and the prepared checklist comes to the picture of the audit report. And it is written opinion of the auditor regarding the entity of the financial statement. And the report is written in a standard format as for mandated by the GAAP, that is for generally accepted auditing standards. And it is then require standard one, and it is allow for certain variations in the report, and depending upon the circumstance of that audit, and where the work auditor engages, and what the following report variation may be used, that is they have mentioned it. And we have some audit report, and that is for clean opinion. If the financial statements are fair and representation of the entity financial positions, and being free of material misstatement, and this is also known as for the unqualified opinion. And the qualified opinion, if there were any scope limitation that were imposed upon the auditor's work, that is one we call as a qualified opinion. And adverse opinion, if the financial statements were materially misstated, and we call this for adverse opinion. And disclaimer of the opinion, which can be triggered by the several situations, and based on the criteria or circumstance, or time frame, which is based on that disclaimer opinion. And if the auditor may not be an independent, or there isn't going to concern issue with the auditee, these are the example for the audit report. And the typical audit report will consist for 3 paragraphs, which is for following of topics. And that is one is for the responsibilities of the auditor, and the management of the entity, and the scope of the audit, and the auditor's opinion of the entity financial statements. So these are the 3 typical audit report, and it will cover for audit report in terms of information security. And the audit report is issued to the users of entity financial statement. And audit report that contains a clean opinion is required by many lenders, and before they will load funds to their business. And it is also necessary for a public publicly held entity to attach the relevant audit reports to its final statement before filling with them Securities and Exchange Commissions. And that's all about audit scope, and manual audit, audit checklist and preparation, and audit report, everything and all. And the next one is we are going to see for the best practices thing. And before going to those topic, if you have any concern, we'll wait for another 5 minutes. We will discuss it. Then give me a 10 minutes break after that. Then we can continue for the next session. Any question, guys? Any question or clarifications? Anything you want to know what we have covered for the session till now? Okay, we'll give a 10 minutes break, guys, and we'll come back, and then final chapters going on, and the best practices for the IT industries. Once that is covered, and the paper will be completed in terms of GS perspective. We'll be back in next after 10 minutes. Okay, guys, we'll continue with the session with the last topic.
Okay.
And the last topic in the GS is for best practices for the IT compliances and regulatory requirements that we are going to discuss about. And the best practices for IT compliance, we have several, and we have listed on it. And based on that, in exam perspective, if they ask the question, and you can elaborate anything in that one. And next one is for that the IT compliance requirement, and we have the classes for under the class of important name. The SEBI, they have listed some agreement according to that. And Sarbanes-Oxley Act, USA, that is why they have some compliance requirement also. That is also we are going to seeing now. And under that SOX compliance audit and SOX auditing of the internal controls, we have it. The final one is for the control objective of the information technology in that for IACA. And the best practices for all the companies, for all the uh, practices and all the functionality, they have the best practices. Similarly, uh, we have the best practices for the compliance level, and that is for it is for the crucial one for the organization, and to ensure they have the law and regulations and industry standards they are following or not. And the information technology thing, the security data, everything will be they have the making the structured format. And if they're failing to comply, any lead to the legal issues and data breaches, and that will lead for the damage to the organization reputations. So in order to avoid those things, they have the best practices in terms of compliance, everything and all. And here the best practices for the IT compliances which we are given below. That is for understand the applicable regulations and standards. So the person who is the chief regulatory officer, and they must know for what is the regulations and standards was currently applicable in the industry side. That is, yeah, the relevant laws, regulations, and the industry standards that apply for the organization, which is for GDPR, HIPAA, SOX, PCI DSS, etc. We have so many things, so they have to know what is their standards and regulations. They have it, and they have to the organization must establish a complaints team. So they have to create a dedicated team responsible for overseeing and managing complaints efforts. And next one is for the perform regular risk assessment, and they have to conduct for regular risk assessment based on the performance and for IT system and data. And the next one is for the develop and implement the policy and procedures. For all the activities we are doing in the organization, we have to make the policy and procedures. And in those policies and procedures, we have to develop, we have to phase of development, and we have to implement in the real time environment in the best practices level. And they have to classify those data. That is what the next one is for data classification and handling. They classify the data based on the sensitivity and the implementation appropriate to the control of the data storage and transmission and disposal. So they have to classify those data and what data they are going to handling it, and what they are going to make in the archive one, and where it is for not usable one. Everything they have to classification on it. And finally, access control. And we are initially discussed about that unauthorized access will lead the damage to the company reputation. So similarly, with the access control, which is implement the strict access control to measure the ensure that the only authorized person can access the sensitive data and systems. And regular audit and monitoring, and it will conduct the regular audit process and monitoring the IT systems, which is data to identify and address the complaints violations. And they have to plan for the IR team, that is for IR plan, that is incident response team, which they have a plan for the incident response plan, which is develop an incident responses plan to effectively respond to security incidents and data breaches. And next one is for encryption, and the encryption is kind of a security thing, and which is sensitive data, both the transit and the rest of the product of the unauthorized access. And vendor management, and if you're working with any vendor management, that is third party level of thing, and they are providing services, they also comply with the relevant regulations and standards. And employee training and awareness, and must educate all the employees about the compliance requirements and the importance of the following IT policies and procedures. And the documentation and record management should maintain through the records for all the IT activities, including security incidents, audits, and complaints assessments. And the final testing one is for penetration testing and vulnerability test scanning. And the regulatory must test for all the IT systems for vulnerabilities and conduct penetration test for identify the weakness where that is. And they have the change management, which is for implement the change process, where the change management process to control and document the changes to the IT system and ensuring they do the not introduce the complaints
Did
risk.
you know each of us has a
And data backup and disaster recovery. And for all the best practices, data should be backed up. Data should be backup, and if anything a disaster happen, that should be recovered easily in case of emergencies. And the continuous improvement, which will help for improve your compliance program and based on the changing regulations and emerging threats. And next one is the privacy by design, and which is integrated privacy consideration into the design and the development of the IT system and the application, and legal and regulatory updates, and they stay informed about the changes relevant to laws and regulations to ensure for ongoing ongoing compliances and reporting and accountability. So establishing a reporting mechanism for the employees to raise the complaints concerns and hold for individuals and team accountable for the complaints failures. And the final one is for board and senior management involvement, and which is for they should ensure for the senior management and the board of the directors are actively involved in the supporting of the compliance efforts. And remember that the IT compliance is going ongoing process, and it requires for the proactive and holistic approach to ensure that your organization remains in compliance with applicable regulations and standards. So the board and senior management they are uh, involved on this process for best practices what we have it, and they will review on it. And it is an ongoing process, and also for it requires for the proactive and holistic approach for in the top level management, and it's remain for the compliance with applicable regulation and standards. And these are the best practices of IT compliances. And Sarbanes-Oxley Act is it is for and also known as for the Public Company Accounting Reform Investor Protection Act 2002 was enacted in the United States in response to a series of the corporate scandals such as Enron and WorldCom, and they introduced for significant regulatory reforms to improve the corporate governance and financial reporting. And part of these reforms, and which includes for the IT compliance and requirement to ensure the accuracy of the reliability of the financial information. And they have elaborated on the IT compliance requirement under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. And this is they have various sections according to the section. The act will be operating on it, and action section 302, which is described for the corporate responsibility for the financial report, which is the CEO and the CFO, the signing of the financial statement, confirming that they are fairly present with the company's financial condition. So they are the responsible person for the financial reporting and in the terms of section 302. And the section 404, which is for elaborating for elaborating for the management assessment of the internal control, which is for the most one of the significant and resource incentive aspects of the SOX complaints. And it requires for the companies to access for report to the effectiveness of the internal control over financial reporting, that is for ICFR. And the companies need to conduct the regular assessment, and they have to identify for the deficiencies where to the remedy weakness and the IT controls. The external auditors also play a role in the reviewing and testing those controls. Section 802, that is for criminal penalties for alerting the documents, and which is imposed for the criminal penalties. It's knowingly altering or destroying or concealing the documents with the intent to the abstract of the abstract or for influence federal investigation and bankruptcy processing. This comes under for the section 802. And the section 409, which is for real-time issue disclosure, and which is for IT system or support for the timely and accurate manner. They have to disclose for the material information to the investors and regulatory bodies. And the section 802, which is for white whistleblower protection, as if any protection provision to the to encourage the employees to report the financial misconduct without fear of retaliation. And it is for IT system may be used to establish a confidential channel for the employees to report the scan concerns and protect their anatomy. That is for whistleblower protection. And whenever they need it, we can able to blow it the whistle in terms of whenever they open the mouth. And Section 806 is for protection of employees of publicly traded companies whose provide evidence of the fraud, and it is involved for the documenting and tracking the whistleblower complaints and ensuring their confidentiality. And the Section 906, which is for defining for the corporate responsibilities for financial reporting. It is similar to the Section 302, which is for the 906, and which is impossible for the criminal or penalties of the corporate officers who certainly mislead in the financial statement. And also, they have the accuracy and the integrity of the financial data. They have to ensure for the certification, and which is not based on the false information. So these are the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of the USA, based on the sections we have disclosed it. And next one is for the class 49, that is SEBI listing agreement, which is for the committee, which is a corporate committee, the governance under the chairmanship, Sri Mr. N.R. Narayanamurthy, who is the founder of the Infosys, and they have further improved of the standards of the corporate governance in India, and they have some guidelines, list of agreement they are given in that committee level, and the significant features they have amended maybe the summarized here, and that is one is for broadening of the definition of the independent director. And next one is for the fixing of norms, which is relating to the non-executive directors and compensation and disclosures. So the board director have the independent director, and the non-executive directors they have the compensation and disclosure based on the fixing of the norm relatings. And the next one is for fixing of the term of non-executive directors to be maximum of 9 years. So the non-executive director should be in maximum of 9 years in terms of the fixation. The next one is for the requirement for all the members of the audit committee begin financially iterated one. And the next one is for the increase the power of the audit committee and the additional duty on the audit committee to review of the certain information by the audit committee. And the new requirement that is for whistleblower policy, we have to implement it for the whistleblower policy, and they have to provide the continent liability of the disclosures. And in order to adding to that, they have to provide the additional disclosures and the new requirement and requirement relating to the audit reports and audit qualification they have provided, and certification, that is a CEO and CFO that need to be certified for that one, and change in that format which is reporting to the stock exchanges relating to the corporate governance. So these are the class 49 of the SEBI listing agreement, which is driven from the Mr. Narayan Murthy. The next one is for that is control objective is the information technology, that is IASCCA. Do you guys know what is meant by IASCCA? Any ideas? First question for this chapter and last question for this session. Yes.
Basically, Information Security Audit and Control Association.
It's kind of body, and they are handled for that the standards and in terms of auditor perspective, and they are the certificate systems. They are the systems in terms of for the compliance perspective, and they have the COVID objective, that is for COVID. We have discussed in the COVID in the initial level of things, and they have the framework they have created for the ISCCA, and they have the information technology and the IT governance related things. They have it. And in this framework, and that is for framework and components, and we have that IT goals, or which is for interlinked with the measurement of the created responsibilities, and they have the five processes are defined. One is for evaluate, direct, monitor, align, and plan, and organize, that is APO. And the first one is for evaluate it, and the next one is for direct and monitor. That is what we call it for EDM, and next one is for align, plan, and organize. That is APO, and other one is for build, acquire, and implement BAI, and last one is for deliver service and support, that DSS, and monitor, evaluate, and assess. So we have discussed it for the two chapter before, the two chapter, that is for AO, PO, uh, and delivery and support, and monitor and assess. So similarly to that, and the framework components will be defined in ISA, and this framework which is ties with the COSO, ITAL, BASL, ISO 2700, CMMI, TOGAF, and we have some standards in that framework, and below are the COPIC components. What is that is for framework and process description, control objectives, and framework is nothing but it's a governance objective and good practices by the IT domain, and process by process and links them to the business requirement. And process description is a reference process model, which is a common language for everyone in the organization. The process map to responsibility area where to plan, build, run, and monitor everything and all. And control objectives, and it's probably the complete set of high level requirement to the considered by the management for effective control of each IT processes. And management guidelines which is helps for assign the responsibility to aggregate for the objectives and measures the performance of that guidelines, and illustrate the relationship with the other processes in terms of management guidelines. And maturity model, we have the CMO model. Similarly, for that, they have defined for that maturity model, which is access for the maturity and capability per process, and helps to address for the where the gap in that control objective. As a framework which is designed for helpful business professionals, which is discussed in the IT related goals, and which is an related result oriented one. And the control objective for information and related technologies is often simply referred to the COBIT, and the framework was existed since the mid of 1990s and has been developed and adopted since that time. And these are the basic 5 principles which is involved in the COBIT framework. That is, first one is for meet the stakeholder needs, and we meet with the stakeholders need. What are the stakeholders they are needing? Because they are the investor, they are investing the money to the company, and they are making the decision where we are going to sustain based on the mission and vision process. And next one is for the covering the enterprise end to end, and they have to cover for end to end activators in terms of enterprise level, and applying the single and integrated framework. And if you are moving with any approaches, that should be in a single one, and it should be integrated with all the framework, all the functionality, all the policy and procedures, and which is enabling for the holistic approach, which is for known by for all the person, and it could not be deviated with some other process within those holistic approach. Once this everything was obtained, and then we have to separate that governance from the management thing. And these are the basic principles of the COPIT, which we have already deeply discussed in that initial level, that is introduction level of the GS topic. Mm. So this is what the control objective in the information technologies, and with respect to the ISCA, that is for information system audit and control association. There are some governance of things. They are and they are associated to the focused on the IT, that is information technology governance thing. They have given it. Okay, finally, I just completed the GS for all the 5 units, guys. Do you have any questions, any concerns? We'll discuss it for next 15 minutes. If it is required, we'll go with some other, we'll extend our time. If you have any clarification question on that, or else we can wind up in next 15 minutes. That's all my end, guys. I just covered for all the topics. Probably you will all get the PPT from Vishnu Priya ma'am as soon as possible. Any more questions? Okay, there is no question from your end, guys. Okay, then there is no question means then we can wind up the session now. And all the best for your examinations and do well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.